Okay, so finishing up with the Diana Cooley piece, or Cool piece. A few more quotes. There's not that much more to it, and then I think I'm going to break for the day, and I'll come back tomorrow and do some Anna Gibbs, and then touch on a few of the other philosophical pieces. These are the two that I'm really going pretty deep into, just because I felt that they had a really strong argument, even though there was some problem with a theorist quoting a theorist who's quoting a theorist who's quoting a theorist. I could tie it into pretty relevant arguments. And as far as affect was concerned, it did raise some really good questions, and was things I was able to take out into the world. So it's that weaving together that I found Diana Cooley seems to be picking up Merleau-Ponty's work and continuing it. So working with providing life, the experience of life as a ground where determinism and existentialism and materialism and all of the isms can come together and offer a fuller experience. And I thought that really well with the Olson piece that we did at the end. I might grab a Olson piece and read it just to kind of finish everything up. That was next to last piece for the course, but everybody who was in the course would know it, and we were doing Polis. And so if you pick up Polis, and that's what he was going into, find your place in the world, and from that privilege positioning, not privilege as in I'm better than everyone else, but privileging as in allow yourself to find a space to inhabit, and from there use that as a place to center yourself and interact with the world around you. And just from interviews I watched with Olson. I keep looking at the name Olson. He really was very much a Renaissance man, a modern version of the Renaissance man. Read everything, believed in cross-disciplinary exercises of intellectual engagement with the world and education. So that would be his thing. So you take all of these ways of engaging with the world and seeing the world and understanding the world, and position yourself, place yourself, and then from there, accepting where you are. Even if you're, I would think, a mobile person, a gypsy spirit, you would be able to place yourself in the larger scheme of world as human, and then from there interact with other humans and the rest of the world. So the quote: "And moving to an anti-humanist ontology of flesh," and we're talking about affect of flesh, the influence that flesh can have. Ponty would therefore need to maintain a sense of perspective, yet eschew its subjectivist and anthropocentric implications. He did so, I suggest, by multiplying perspectives, a move made feasible by the recognition that bodies and objects are simultaneously seeing and seen, such that the rays or arcs of visibility that crisscross the visual field emanate simultaneously from each profile of every object, all jostling together and intersecting to gestate and agitate the dense tissue of relationships that constitute the flesh, and place the philosopher everywhere and nowhere. The image of coexistence in the intercorporeal field then suggests a pre- or post-classical topographical space, a milieu in which are circumscribed relations of proximity and envelopment. So she goes on to talk about systems of oppositions that influence the structural linguistics, is apparent in helping to conceptualize a productivity that is attributed solely to differentiation and relationality. So this is a dichotomous existence, or a multifaceted existence. So it's a system of oppositions. What I would say is not necessarily always oppositional, but sometimes there are just varying levels of structure in paradigms that can be shifted. Sometimes they are in opposition, and sometimes not so much. Continuing on, bodies are all caught in a pell-mell of anonymous pre-personal visibility with whose modulations and reliefs they enjoy existential contact. whence they are caught in the circuitry of a world where intercorporeal, intermundane space they inhabit, which is an immanent generativity of existence. So that's the immanent affect of existence. So, and then if you remember the definition, and I think right now, just because we've had the generativity pop up a few times, I'm going to return to the definition, just kind of refresh the idea. So it's the ability or power to generate and produce something. So that would be the, so she's saying is that this existence in a world whose intercorporeal, intermundane space that we inhabit it, that is where the generativity of existence and of the flesh is immanent, where the potential is. She continues to go on about speaking of folded matter, and in that what she meant was folded matter is we live in a world of matter, but it's that primordial, ever-changing, shifting that goes on around us. So that's nature's capacity for productive rationality and reflexivity. And this is derived from by Merleau-Ponty from Husserl's account of two hands touching. And this is a quote directly from Husserl. When I touch my right hand with my left, my right hand as an object has a strange property of being able to feel too. In the flesh of my fingers, each digit is both objective and phenomenal. Outside and inside of the fingers, in reciprocity, in chasm, activity and passivity, coupled, mutually encroaching, which things touching me as I touch them, and myself. This reversibility is nonetheless an ambiguous setup, because the reversal between touching and touch always miscarries at the last moment, such that there is a shift or spread, a cut between them. Indeed, if this slippage of non-coincidence did not occur, there would only be inherent repetition rather than the hints that opens my body in two, as productive difference between identicals. This reversibility is not actual identity, but equally that the divergence is not a void either. It is this chasm between touching and being touched, activity and passivity, phenomenal and objective being, that grants the body its capacity for double sensations, and which opens it onto a world, or, to express more ontologically, as being, this is being, flesh, existence, opening itself to contingency, meaning, and self-transformation. And I thought self-transformation was very interesting to put in that line, but there is the potential of being touched, being object, and being subject at the same time, enable someone to self-transform. A hollow out whereby, quote, a hollow out whereby interiority, dimensionality, and productive difference occur. Kuhl goes on to say Merleau-Ponty is adamant that there is no teleological presumption. And goes on to also say life is understood not by the hard nucleus of being, but the softness of the flesh, qua an investment, installation, relief, or watermark in being. It references to coiling, labyrinths, hollows, watermarks, soft flesh, the vortice, and which his inspiration may have been Leibniz. This is evocative of a kind of wild being, a sensuous, visual, tactile, pluridimensional flesh, where matter is a fabric coiled over and over in a more material and ethereal layerings and gatherings. This teeming, turbulent, convulsive world suggests an infinity of folded matter which, like time and space, is continuously folding and unfolding. As matter swirls and metamorphoses, its modulations do yield provisional forms of style and existing. In the conclusion, which I felt was very Cartesian, Kuhl goes on to say Merleau-Ponty's abiding image of the political. And I thought that was a huge shift from where she was talking about existence to, at the end, bring in the political. But there we have it. Merleau-Ponty's abiding image of the political was drawn not from Baroque, but from the Renaissance. And earlier, in one of my earlier posts, I had talked about the majority of theorists don't operate from an ivory tower in a sterile, vacuous environment. They're actually out there engaging the world on some level, whether it be political, as is Ponty's case, as asserted by Kuhl, or as Marx was involved in economics. All the different theorists always come to us from some discipline, so they're engaging with the world on some level. So Merleau-Ponty's, quoting, abiding image of the political was drawn not from the Baroque, but from the Renaissance. It is Machiavelli whom he credits with the recognition of milieu proper to politics. A politics that is not a transparent realm, but a surveyed and controlled by the light of reason and the power of the state external to society. But a politics that is a field of competing forces, strategies, reversals, and subterfuges that have incessantly to be finessed, interpreted, and negotiated from within. Perhaps, nonetheless, it was the imagery of the folds that alerted Ponty to the way the world, devoid of transcendental mysteries, is still nonetheless rippled with hidden recesses, shadows, and shades, secrets, and anonymity, with an obstinate resistance to be lumine naturelle, whose obscurity or veiling is inseparable from forming and disclosing, but which is confused with transcendent force, or certainty at our peril. So it's that sense of certainty that actually puts us at risk. So when we think that there is something concrete, we have to be aware that there is always, in Ponty's assertion or interpretation of Machiavelli, that there is always things that need to be finessed, interpreted, and negotiated with from within. So the individual needs to always be engaging with the shifting world around it. So I have a poem that has to do with touch, because we're talking about the generativity of flesh, and that's the ability and power to generate or produce something. This one also, there's a couple other pieces, like the affect and the mimetic communication, which this actually speaks to as well, as another piece we have here, the witch's senses, which, like I said, I'm going to touch on those briefly, much more so the mimetic communication of Anna Gibbs, because it's very well developed argument, but I will touch on the other ones as well, but this poem will not be visited again. I wonder why his soothing touch made me cringe in disgust, while once it had made me a ravenous appetite. His smile still seduced me with its violence as I consumed pieces of him, mere particles that invaded my bubble. The taste of his skin evoked memories hidden deep in the black corners of a black mind with white walls. The sight of his smooth muscled skin rippling past with a panther's pace still sent a shivered thrill across my lips. And the sound of his honey-dripped voice oozed into my soul and slid sweetly to the pit of my sex. But it was that soft trace of fingers that grazed upon my flesh, like the biting teeth of demons, soothing me with a deep revulsion, sweet, bitter disgust. And I thought, when I thought of these theorists that were talking about the affect power of the flesh, I thought of how we communicate with the world and we engage with the world through a corporeal existence, through being a body being. Not only are we a word being, but we're a body being, so that there is no escaping the fact that we have arms, hands, we're bipedal, we're upright. Some of us are female, some of us are male. All of these things actually interpolate us, and we use that to engage the world and in some ways interpolate the world, because we can engage in a certain way and we have to ignore or can never access other existences. So that's all for this piece. I'm going to post these up. I'm going home and I will be back tomorrow.